And one of the biggest shipbuilding concerns right now is the submarine supply base, and if it can support building both Virginia-class attack submarines and Columbia-class ballistic missile submarines for the Navy. At Sea Airspace 2019, David Larter asked about that question during his interview with the Navy's acquisition chief. Take a look.
I have to be remiss if we didn't talk about submarines real quick. The anxiety that I'm getting from industry, certainly from industry and occasionally from the Navy as well, is the supplier base. We've got a third Virginia in the budget, in the fit-up. We've got Columbia coming online, and all of this is happening all at once. And there's some concern that downstream, not necessarily at Bath, but in their supplier network, that's going to put things under pressure. I'm wondering, how do you manage the supplier issue, and how do you make sure that you keep these programs on track, especially with Columbia, being that, as the Navy's been saying for years, there's very limited margin for error?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We have a submarine industrial base, both government supplier and Electric Boat Newport News, done tremendous things rebuilding itself from a decade of kind of hiatus in the 90s. And gotten up to 2 Virginias a year and done a very good job of that. Submarines are very sensitive to cadence and sequence. And so the art will be, as we add in Columbia and some of the other mods we want to do to Virginia, not to mess up that cadence and sequencing and then causing massive disruption as we work our way through. So we're supremely focused on Columbia, making sure that design is solid. The biggest threat to Columbia is Virginia. And so if we don't keep Virginia on track, then that can cause disruption to Columbia. The biggest threat to Virginia is the supplier base not being able to keep up. So we've got a number of initiatives. We have an integrated enterprise that looks like all the suppliers for all of our nuclear construction, and looking at them in total. There's about 329 of those, and making sure they are up to the task. And then where we see challenges, either getting at rate or having kind of single source, proactively addressing those challenges. Congress has been a great help with us. They provided funding to go after those, and so we will continue to manage that. But we've got to, again, it's a big enterprise, and got to keep focused on it.
And last question, with the maintenance challenges that you've had with the attack boats, you've said publicly that sometimes the suppliers that are supplying things for the for maintenance jobs are the same ones that are supplying for Virginia and will be supplying for Columbia. The last thing I want to talk about is where you see the maintenance challenges for the attack boats, and is there a light at the end of the tunnel for the attack boats? Are things getting better?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 or 3 things we're doing in parallel. So we have hired, we've actually had hired and accelerated about a year the hiring of the government folks in the shipyard to get to full strength. So they're at about 36,100. So the good news is we've got the workforce. A little of the opportunity or challenges are fairly green. So some really phenomenal work, Portsmouth in particular, but at all the shipyards, of getting that experience level up. That'll give us the depth going forward in a couple of years to take care of when we build back up to a 66 submarine fleet. To help some of the surge, we've been sending some to the private yard. That's another area where we've got to get a skilled base of repair specialists. We're challenged a little bit on the front end. I think we'll work our way through that. And then third is rebuilding the shipyards for the future. So the Navy's got about a $21 billion investment over the next 20 years. That will allow us, as the workforce matures, then to gain efficiency, 20 to 30% of efficiency, which will then allow us to take that increased load once we come out of the submarine dip and be able to manage all the submarines. But it's something we've got to, again, that whole submarine enterprise is very integrated, and we've got to look at it all together.